better never ends. In health, in performance, no matter your starting point, you can always strive for better. My name's Charlie Goodchild, I'm your host, and this is the Better Never Ends podcast. We've made it our mission to share with you the expertise and wisdom of role models and leading experts in their field, teaching us about how we can be better, telling stories about their journey to better, and inspiring you to discover yours. Today we have Sam McGowan in the podcast studio, and really thrilled to have her in. And we've been talking about this for a little while now. I think between the two of us, we've been busy and distracted and have lots of other things going on. So we finally managed to set a date, and here you are. So Sam is a really inspirational fitness coach. In fact, we could even play around with the words. You're a trainer, you're a coach. we were discussing this the other day. Probably doesn't really matter in the end, does it? No. But Sam, before I introduce you any further and get it wrong and make a hash of it, all I'll say is that I've been really inspired by your social media work and the campaign that you're on and how you empower women in particular to strength train. And that's why I was really keen to get you on and talk about that and how important that is in your world and the way that you do it as well. But from here, could you just tell us a bit about your journey and how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's always very nice when you get introduced because there's a few compliments in there. It's always a nice little boost. Oh God, where do I start? So I have always loved sport. Even in primary school, I was quite lucky to have a school that was really into sports day, and I don't know where it came from, but I've always been the girl who would just do all of it. Like, I would want to play football with the lads, I'd want to play cricket, I'd want to do everything that like you were kind of told that you shouldn't be doing as a girl. And then from a young age I got into gymnastics from like 6 and ended up competing. I actually also did athletics competitively. Then I managed to get to about 14 and I had to make the decision between doing both because competition started to clash, and competed nationally for gymnastics. I was British champion tumbler at one point. I loved it, and that went on till I was about 24, 25. So a lot of my life. And then after that, I was really lost actually mentally. I really struggled. It becomes your identity. Mm-hmm. But from a like health point of view, like physically, I didn't know what to do outside of gymnastics and sports. Yeah. The idea of going to a gym and lifting weights, I couldn't think of anything worse. I thought lifting weights was for like bros, and if I ever went into a gym, I would faff. I would go into the ladies' room, do some planks, do what I knew from gymnastics, but I hated it. And then I'd get a bit bored and just leave 20 minutes after. I tried classes, which was, it was okay, but I never really felt comfortable doing any of it, and I just felt a bit gross, just physically, mentally. When you were so used to competing at a high level and then, going to a class or a gym, you feel like a bit of a dick. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Great.
I don't think we have many kids listening in.
Okay. I should have asked that at the start because I've done it now. But yeah, I just didn't like it. And back then I was actually done a lot of jobs over the years, but I got into marketing. And I actually got a job in Manchester working for a big personal training brand known for transformations more so. But it was honestly just such a like off chance for me to have this job. But that was where I was introduced to weight training. And then they actually taught me how to use stuff and how to move. And quite quickly I realised I was good at it. And I just fucking loved it. I just felt a bit more me again, feeling strong, and you can get quite competitive with it, so that element was covered for me. And from then on, I just kind of I was sharing my journey a lot. I've always been into sharing. I used to have a blog, like on Blogspot. I don't even know if anyone knows that, but as long as like a social media or some form of social media has been going, I've been sharing stuff. So when I started training, I was sharing that naturally as well, and I was really honest about it. And over time, people started to message me and ask me questions and being like, "Oh, you've inspired me to do this today." And I was like, "Oh, that's really great. Like, that's such a nice feeling." And fast forward like a couple of years of doing that, I got to a place where I had a bit of a following on social media. I love training, and I've been a gymnastics coach as well over the years as I was training myself. So I loved helping people. And then one day I think I got a pretty good role at Work for My Protein and marketing, head of marketing. I got that role, and my whole life I've been trying to get to a place where I'm in a good career, like I wanted to do well for myself. And then you get to that place and you're like, is this it? Yeah. And it was, I got this, I was really proud of myself for getting this job and this upgrade. But yeah, I was like, this isn't what I want to be doing. So there and then I just decided I'm going to be a personal trainer. I knew a lot of them because I worked in the industry and knew what it was about, knew the challenges as much as the good stuff. And that was like March. I can't remember the year because I'm terrible at stuff like that. But March, I decided in March that September I was going to go full time, complete, like dive in. I am that kind of person. I have to go all in. And then I did it. And then, that was over 5 years ago. But my main reason for doing it was because for me, like I was that woman who hated the gym, thought that lifting weights was stupid. And then just because someone taught me, I fell in love with it, and I just wanted more people to feel the benefits, more women to feel the benefits. And that was pretty much my like niche from the go. Like I've trained guys, don't get me wrong, but now I just focus on women. So that's it really. Now I train women, help them not just like learn how to lift weights, but actually have the confidence to lift more. Because I think some women are doing that, but they're just still like, oh, am I doing it right?
Society's changing.
Yes.
So it's been 15-ish years since I've been lifting weights, and certainly the first 5 years you'd hardly see a woman in the weights room at all. Then you see the odd person, but they were very much kind of dipping in and out of it, but not really going for it. But yeah, the last 5 years I would say there's been a shift. It's more normal to see women weight training. It's becoming less of a taboo. My wife started training about 10 years ago, and I remember her being she was really nervous about it, but she doesn't like any other exercise, but she likes weight training. So she kind of almost felt like she had to get over it one way or another, because that was the only thing that was healthy that she would engage with. And now she's still really nervous about it. And I would say that your journey is a really positive and empowering one, but I'd say there's so much more to go. There's so many more women out there that are still terrified of the gym, still feel uncomfortable and intimidated by that environment. And I guess that's part of what motivates you and part of what inspires you to keep going, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's never ending really, because yes, like it's getting better, and I'm almost in a bubble now where all my clients are, loving weight training and everything else, but they all started from somewhere, and I know that person that they were when they came to me. There's freaking loads of them. So it is getting better, but yeah, it's still a battle, and I'm just going to keep going, because I don't even from I'm a personal trainer in this industry. Most mornings I'm the only woman in there, so there's still a lot of work to do on that front. But yeah, it's improving, but work to do for sure.
And there's got to be a real courage, by the way. I was listening to what you were saying there, that decision to just make a completely clean break from a good career, a potential career for life. And you're already doing quite well, and clearly very talented, by the way, on the creative side. I've seen your social media content. It's really good. It's really creative and engaging. So there's a big bit of courage there. So what does that take? I mean, how did it feel like that at the time? Did it feel courageous, or was it just, it felt obvious?
Yeah, it's funny because so many people say that to me. I don't think I realised until after.
Bit of naivety.
Kind of, but at the same time, I haven't come from money. One of my drives has been that I didn't want to stay in that situation. Yeah. So I've always, like, I moved out when I was 17. I didn't have savings. I don't have anyone who can back me up if it goes wrong. So I've always had that, and I've always found a way. Whether it's meant that I've worked 3 jobs in one go, plus being a gymnast. I was a delivery driver for Domino's at one point. What's actually really funny on that note, someone messaged me the other day on Instagram. She thought she recognised me, and it turned out that we worked together at Domino's. And I was like, oh God, I don't forget about it, because it's quite funny, like someone like me rocking up. One person actually said to me once when I delivered her pizza, it's like, you're not fat and sweaty, which I know is not like awful thing to say in this industry, but that's what they said, so it's quite funny. But yeah, I've always had that, like, I've never had a backup, so I work quite well in that situation.
You've got to graft.
Yeah,
one way or another, you got to find a way.
Yeah. But I look back and I'm quite proud of how I made that transition, because I made a plan. I'm not much of a planner. I'm very, very good at doing stuff, but I'm not that good at planning. But I was like, look, I know in September, like, I'm my source of income. So I basically, I'd not even qualified, but I knew I was going to do it. So anyone who messaged me on Instagram, anyone who spoke to me, anyone I could think of, I would tell them, like, I wouldn't announce it publicly, but I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be a PT in September, so if you want me to be a coach, let me know and we'll have a chat. I just made this list of people, and then I started holding consultations. I was working at the time. I got a job that was a bit more flexible, so I left my protein. I was working out of a WeWork, so I started holding consultations there. Yeah, it's like, welcome to my office, like, free coffee. It was lovely. And sometimes I would do it in, like, the Sainsbury's cafe next to the gym that I was going to be working at. So from day one, I was actually full. And I'm quite proud of that, because I think sometimes I tell myself that I'm just winging it and I don't know what I'm doing.
You'd earned the right for it though, right? Because you've been sharing your journey. You'd already earned trust from your followers, your community. So once you said you were going to be their coach, you, in some ways, I imagine they already thought you were.
Yeah.
They were just then paying for the service instead of just engaging for free.
Yeah, but I will say I was really honest as well. Like, I was working in content at Ultimate Performance, right? So my boss was Nick Mitchell. And for anyone in the industry will know that that's quite challenging. He's a very, very successful man. It was amazing to work alongside someone like that. But the standard is so high, right? So me being a personal trainer, all of a sudden I was like, look, I don't know. I'm new to this. And I was really honest with the people that came to me. But one thing I know is that I genuinely care about you and your journey. And I think that's why people wanted to work with me.
There's a really nice saying I've heard before. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's nice.
And it's so true in my world as well. As a physio, you really have to show that connection and that care. If you don't do that, then I think they're not really going to engage and listen because they don't trust you yet. And trust comes from a place of care and love. So yeah, I imagine that's what was going a long way in those early days. It didn't matter that you were a bit raw and a bit green. You cared about them, and that's what they wanted. They wanted someone to care about them and look after them. And although they might not always get it perfectly right, they were trying the best for them, for that person, and they could sense it.
Yeah.
And by the way, before I forget, I also had I used to work in Papa John's, my first job. I lasted 2 days. And
we were rivals.
Yeah, I lasted 2 days, and I remember them telling me to do this really annoying washing up job. It was totally ridiculous, and it was like all this top shelf of like dirty pans, and I said, I don't want to do that. And they were like, well, you have to do that. Oh, no, I don't think I want to do that.
Bye then.
And well, I'm not sure you should come back tomorrow. I said, no, I don't think I should. And that was it, 2 days, and I left. So
well, if it makes you feel any better, one job I had, I could not find this place, right? And my phone died. I went back out again, could not find this house. And eventually I was so stressed that I took the pizza back, and that day I quit. I was like, that's enough for me.
It's not the world. Yeah.
Driving around in my little Citroen Saxo.
It is funny though, hearing people, because I had a similar thing where I was working 5 jobs at one point, and I was trying to make it work in sport and as a physio. And to do that, it was really badly paid. So I had to do 5 jobs. And I remember was just thinking one day when I was going from one job to another, sitting in traffic on the M25, like, what on earth am I doing? Is it really worth it? And at the end of that season, the answer to that was no, it wasn't worth it. And now I'm way happier doing one job and comfortable with that. So yeah, it's really interesting hearing you say that. But you kind of got to make ends meet. When you're young, you got to figure out what it is that you want to do, and to do that, having a really broad experience and lots of skills is quite helpful. And on that, those social media skills that you developed when you were working in marketing, you're using those day in, day out, aren't you? So it wasn't a waste. It was just setting you up for a different journey. Yeah,
it's funny. I was talking about this morning. I didn't go to college or uni. I've always been the kind of person that doesn't really know what they want to do and isn't particularly great at one thing. But I'm pretty good at a lot of things. So like, I went to college, I tried it. It wasn't for me. I just wanted to be doing stuff. And I think also because I wanted to move out of home, I needed to earn. So I got a job in a call centre. Like, that was my first job, and I was there for 4 years. Probably the best job I could have done, because I learned how to speak to people. I learned sales. I was doing outbound sales. I was one of the very few women there as well.
Is this a common theme?
Yeah.
Woman in a man's world.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm so comfortable with doing what I'm doing, and I understand it as well. But there's so many things that I learned, like written communication, complaints. You have a lot of them. Working in insurance as well, so you probably know it's one of those fun things to chat about.
My wife works in insurance, so she bores me with that.
But yeah, I worked in a call centre, and like after that worked for an entertainment agency booking like bands for weddings and stuff. And then I gradually, and that's actually, that business there is when I started to get into official like content. Like, I'd always said it before, like I've always shared stuff on social media, but I started to learn a bit more about the actually how to do it. But yeah, when I became a PT, I don't think I realised until, you start speaking to people and wondering, like, when people are complaining that they don't have any clients, and you start to realise what they're doing versus what you're doing. I was like, oh, actually, everything I've done until this point is, it's like, it did feel, and it's so cheesy, but it felt like it was meant to be.
So I've got this theory about jack of all trades, and I think when you're someone who's got a real broad interest level, and you're kind of good at most things without necessarily excelling in anything, because it's a bit like, I actually feel like I'm a bit like that. That you end up picking all these different skills in those areas, and early in your career it doesn't necessarily set you apart. You just end up being the person who does a bit of everything, and you get all these different responsibilities, and you don't necessarily feel like an expert. You're just good at lots of different stuff. But then later in your career, you're able to, especially when you're in work like us, where you're essentially entrepreneurial and doing lots of, you're running a business by yourself and needing to do all of it. All of a sudden it comes together. Actually, I kind of know how to do a bit of that. Oh yeah, I've done a bit of that before. I've done a bit of that. And it all comes together, and you feel really comfortable just being broad in your skill set. And that's not everyone, right? That's fine. But I think that jack of all trades thing really pays off later in your career. There was a book I read called Range, which talks all about that. It's like this concept of being an expert generalist. So you're just expert at a bit of everything without necessarily being the super specialist, which is where like PhD type candidates go. They just become really, really clever on one specific question. So yeah, I think in the end it pays off. That's my thoughts on it. And it sounds like you went on a similar journey.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear from someone else who is like that, and you do kind of spot it, but yeah, sometimes you do feel like, oh God, I don't have a degree. Like I didn't specialize in anything. I don't have that like knowledge that some do. But yeah, you're right. Like you only need so much. Like with what I do, don't get me wrong. There's people that need to know more. Like you guys, I come to you guys for stuff I don't know. Like I will go put my hands up and say, I don't know everything. But yeah, it really does. Like you said, when you're running a business, I don't think a lot of personal trainers or like wellness, whatever it is in this industry, realise how much more there is to do outside of training people.
Well, there's a humility that comes through there that's basically saying, I don't know everything, but I know some people who might, and let's lean on their skills. a lot of people who maybe get a bit insecure about that, or maybe think that they know everything, which is another trap that many people would fall into. And I think we've probably all done it in various stages in our own careers. But having that humility and acknowledgement of where you're at and your scope, what's your scope, and knowing that there's other people out there in your network that you can lean on, actually ends up being even more powerful for your clients, for you as well, but your clients, because, well, I don't quite know how to solve this problem. Why don't you go and see so-and-so and they can help you, right? So
I literally just did that a couple of weeks ago. You know, I had a lovely lady come to me and really keen to like get stronger, little bit older than my typical client, but realised how important strength training was and started training with her, but she got quite a few things that need to be worked on. And, you know, I love working alongside people like yourself, with clients who've got like niggles that, I can't necessarily help with. I'm not a physio. And we were doing that, but actually we had a couple of sessions and I didn't feel that confident that I was keeping her safe. Not that I would try and hurt her, but you know, when she's asking me a question, if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to wing it. And it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I think you're going to be better off with someone who knows more than me. So go away and do that for a bit, get comfortable, get back into a place where you can actually start to push and feel confident pushing, more importantly. I'm more than happy to do that because it's not fun for me to think, oh God, like, should I have said that? Was that the right thing to do? But also, her journey will be so much quicker and more enjoyable than me trying to faff about figuring it out myself. Like, I'd rather her go away and come back to me and then do it. Like, you know, so I've never been afraid of that, and I find it it's a shame that people don't feel comfortable doing it.
I agree, and a lot of the time it just comes from a bit of insecurity, I think. Whereas, once you're comfortable not knowing stuff, you can then be braver with that stuff and just say, actually, this isn't really my world. You go and see someone who knows more about this and then come back. And then the other end of it, the client's like, oh, great, thanks. That's really good.
Oh, she was so grateful. Yeah. She's loving it as well now. So that makes me happy.
So when it comes to working with women, you mentioned about some of the challenges that they can have, and you've spoken about that society, I guess, is part of the problem. But if we put the society to one side, what other challenges do you find working with women compared to working with men?
I would say one of the biggest challenges that I work on with my clients is having that all or nothing mindset, which leads them nowhere in their health and fitness journey. I don't know if it's a guy thing as well, but it's so common to get a female come to me and say that, you know, I've been trying for years to get to this place, whether it's that they want to feel more confident in the way they look, or they do just want to feel stronger. But usually they're trying to do too much at once. That's a huge challenge for a lot of people. Not so much, you'd think that telling people to do less is quite nice, and it is, eventually they learn, but it's the mindset around it. You know, feeling like, oh, if I do less, like, how am I going to get there? But as we all know, if we try and do too much, it becomes too overwhelming, and then you can't keep it up, and then you stop, and then you don't get anywhere. So I'd say that, along with like a lot of insecurities, you know, comparing themselves to other people. Nutrition is very complex, and you know, I'm not a nutritionist, but a lot of the time it's not necessarily the food itself and the education around that, but more so the mindset towards it. Women are complex for sure. So there's quite a lot of challenges, but I would say the biggest ones is that all or nothing approach, comparing themselves to others, and also just having more like self-belief, like self-worth. So many times I get women come to me and think they're not doing enough, or, you know, I can't, even physically, like, oh, maybe I should try and go heavy. It's like, come on, you are way stronger than you're making out.
There's within physio, it's called boom and bust. So you're either booming or you're busting, and there's nothing in between. It's that all or nothing concept really fits. And actually, from what we both understand, is consistency is way more important than nailing every session. having the odd rubbish session. That's fine. That's okay. And I've seen you post about this. It's like, you're having a shit week. That's all right. Doesn't matter. Just either do something or don't, but don't let it derail your next week. You know,
Sure.
It's just trying to chug along, doing something, and then when you are ready to push, then you might push a bit harder. But I think the problem is that, I boomed and it's gone really badly. I just won't do anything.
Yeah, it's the expectation, isn't it? I think that's actually the biggest problem, is people's expectation of being healthy and fit is so perfect that it's impossible for anyone to achieve it.
Because I'm far from perfect. Far from perfect. And but I'm relatively consistent. I'm not perfectly consistent, but I'm relatively consistent. Over 15 years, I've mostly gone to the gym once or twice a week. I've mostly done some form of cardiovascular exercise once a week, maybe twice a week when things are going well. But that's it. And people would sometimes look at me, and I'm not big and muscly, but they're like, how do you stay really slim and trim? It's like, I just relatively consistent with nutrition, exercise. That's kind of it. And with sleep, there's like all the things that you need to be aware of. I'm okay at. Jack of all trades again. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm just okay. I'm fairly healthy, and I think in the end that works for me. But I'm not a fantastic exerciser. I'm not not perfect in my diet. And I think that's sometimes misconstrued, isn't it? And it's like the social media world really starts to make you feel like everything has to be perfect, because if you don't talk about perfection, then you might not get the likes. You might not get this. You might not get that. It's quite hard actually posting about the grey, isn't it? Just the bit in the middle. It's like,
it's boring.
Right. Yeah, but you're doing a good job of it, by the way. Like my perception of it. So I think the key is when you're with a client, for me anyway, is like connecting them to the grey. It's like, it's okay if you're doing a bit of this. It's going to work. It's going to work if you miss the odd session. It's fine. Don't worry so much about it. So how do you get that balance when you're working with individuals and trying to navigate that grey and that murkiness within the literature or the evidence base?
When they're first starting out, I think I have a bit of balance. I have some who've been on and off for years, or what's really common, especially since COVID actually, is people have been thrown off by like COVID. They might have been into fitness and had a really good routine, and then something threw them off, and then they haven't done anything for 3 years, as an example. And then they feel like it's like starting is impossible. Like it just feels so far away. And I actually it's always about meeting them where they're at. I think a lot of clients I work with are trying to be that person that they used to be. Sometimes it's when they're actually quite young. And it's like, well, you're not that person now. You've got different responsibilities. You know, you have a job that's pretty high pressured. Some have kids. Some just want a life outside the gym, which is my biggest thing. Like I obviously my Instagram shows that I train a lot and I work in the gym, but I love doing nothing. Yeah. I play games now on the Xbox as well.
Do you know what? I think we should speak more about this in general in the fitness world. Doing nothing is amazing.
Honestly, I'm very good at it.
Yeah, I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
And like there's obviously the extreme of that is loneliness, right? You do too much nothing, you get lonely, and you lose interest, and you get lethargic. But a nice little hit of nothingness, nothing better than that for me.
Yeah, some people need it more. You know, some people need to do more and others need to do a bit less. But I would say that working on finding that balance, like so many people I work with, I will meet them where they're at and say, look, you're doing nothing right now. So instead of you thinking of doing like 4 or 5 sessions a week and running every day and all this, preparing all of your meals, like stop it. Like, let's just focus on getting good at one thing. Like, let's just train twice a week if that's what you can do consistently. And instead of trying to make every single meal, how about just preparing your breakfast? You know, because some people, how about eating vegetables? Because you don't do that right now.
Yeah.
You know, one thing and then just building slowly. I think everyone's in a rush to just, I don't know what it like, have this expectation of what they want to get to. If you just slow the fuck down and try and take your time and just keep chipping away, like I love that phrase, like chipping away, like it's like you said, like you've been chipping away for 15 years and it's paid off, right?
Yeah.
most people who are in a place you want to get to did not do that in 12 weeks.
But they're trying to get there
in 12
weeks. Yeah, that's where it is. And from experience working with clients, is ones that tried too much too soon, they end up failing one way or another. Like, they've probably overloaded their tissues and end up injured, or they psychologically they can't handle it, it's too much, they get overwhelmed, or they realise that actually they don't like it. They don't like it very much. And something that, in fact, you touched on this earlier, you didn't like lifting weights before. You didn't really like going to the gym. And that's kind of okay. You don't have to like it straight away, but there's got to be some sense of value towards it. You need to value it, right? But in the end, sometimes you start to like it. Running is the perfect example for me. I used to hate running, and I did it purely to chase a ball around a pitch for many years, and that was the only way I would run. And then I started to do it to train, and 6 months, I would say, it took me to start liking it. And that's pretty common. I think the gym is a similar situation for many people. So it's not, if people say I hate going to the gym or I hate lifting weights, like, okay, but do you want to be stronger? Do you want to be healthier? If the answer to that is yes, like, well, let's see where we can start. You might like it in the future, and if you don't, fine, find something else. But I think that's generally my message.
Well, yeah, I say this often. Like, I've not once had someone come to me and not love it. No one's stopped weight training after I've introduced them to it. Yeah, and I'm very proud of that. But yeah, I actually shared a post on this yesterday. Again, it's that expectation of thinking that someone like me fucking skips into the gym, happy as Larry. I'm going to have the best time ever. And I love spending time preparing meals. We don't, but the benefits of doing so outweigh spending that hour in the gym when you can't be arsed, or getting up a bit earlier. Especially as we get older. I don't want to be immobile when I'm like 40, 50.
Yeah, in order to be happy in the long term and to be, in order to be happy in the long term, we need to suffer in the short term. If we're not willing to do that, we want to be happy in the short term, but ultimately you'll end up suffering in the long term.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult one for many people, is that can they take that leap and suffer a bit in the short term in order to be happy and pleased with where their life's at in the long term regarding their health. I think it's a tricky one for many people and unfortunately most people decide that too late. They change their mind on that a bit too late, and it's really hard to get back to it. It's not impossible, but the older you get, the lower your health and fitness becomes, the longer your journey to achieving that becomes as well.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so important to kind of learn to enjoy the process. Like you said, that won't necessarily happen overnight. Yeah. But I think one of the biggest things that I help women is getting them to focus on progression in other forms. So most women, sadly, look at their body every single day. They weigh themselves. They are forever just thinking of that end goal of, well, I want to look a certain way. And that's what's great about weight training, is that I'm shifting their focus to like, well, how did you perform in the gym today? Again, not every session is going to be amazing, but it's like, how did you feel? Yeah. Like, how do you feel now versus 4 weeks ago when you were scared shitless of lifting weights? And now they walk out the gym feeling empowered. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, stop thinking about all the negative connotations you have with exercise and think about how fucking great it would feel to not be out of breath when you go up the stairs, and to not feel like you're lagging behind when you're out for a walk with friends, or starting to feel like your body's withering away. Like, would you not rather walk around with confidence and be able to step foot in a gym with confidence and be able to lift a shit ton of weight and put it back down again and be like, yeah, like I'm getting really aggressive now, but like, fuck you. Like, I
love to hear that.
Especially as a woman though, like, it's such, I'm not like a shouty feminist or anything, nothing wrong with that, I'm just not, but I love walking into a gym that's full of men and being like, hey, I can probably lift pound for pound. Yeah. I'm stronger than you. I love that. But even if you weren't stronger than everyone, it's just nice to have that confidence. Yeah.
What other benchmarks do you set for your clients? Because what you're saying there is sometimes you want to be focusing on things that aren't about aesthetics, that aren't about body composition. So what other things do you help to channel the progress? Is there objective measures you might take? Does it depend? What do you look at?
It does depend. Like the biggest thing that's the fun part really is like looking at things that they want to achieve. So for a lot of women, like getting that first pull up is like the longest journey, but so rewarding. Being able to deadlift like X amount, even, you know, being able to do push-ups properly and that kind of stuff. So focusing on training performance. But the other biggest thing that we celebrate a lot is mindset. So, you know, I'll have people who might come to me initially and always come away from a weekend socializing with friends feeling guilty and feeling like, oh, I've done this again and I've ruined my program, this, that and the other. And then fast forward 3 months' time, they're celebrating, you know, I had such a great weekend, you know, I didn't overindulge, but I also enjoyed myself and not worried about it either, and I'm excited for the next week. You know, who wants to be coming away from enjoying time with friends and then feeling bad about it? Like, it's such a shame for me to hear that. So getting them to acknowledge that progress, because sometimes they just skim over it, they don't even realize. And I think that's probably the biggest part of a coach's job, is being like, hey, can you just take a minute to acknowledge how well you're doing? Don't get me wrong, we do look at body composition. Like, I think it's really important to say, like, it's okay to care about the way you look, but it can't be the only thing.
Yeah.
And your approach to that has to be, it can't be to just be beating yourself up about how much body fat you've got every day.
Especially when we both know that body composition changes are often quite slow. So sometimes it's quite hard to see that. Whereas the early changes that most people make is they get stronger pretty quick. Neurally, that happens really fast. So they might not grow the muscle. Yeah, it is. It really is, isn't it? And it's like that's why I tend to anchor those early progress stages in their strength metrics. Like, look how much stronger you've got. Remember when we first picked up that deadlift, you're doing 12 kilos off the floor. Now you've got a bar and you've got 40. That was only 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really helpful thing for most people. You're speaking a lot about these holistic ways of coaching as well, that it's not just about the exercise, the nutrition, this mindset side of things. What do you think the common problems are around that? You've spoken of that insecurity as well, but how do you navigate that with your clients to really anchor them into something that's holistic and wholesome for them?
That's a really hard one because it's so individual and I'm still learning. But it's honestly conversations. Yeah. I think that's why the relationship is so important, like I say at the start. And I think because I'm so honest and open on my social media, they come to me for that reason. So we're already off to a good start. It's not too often I find that challenging to get them to open up. But where a lot of people go wrong is they get a coach and then they only talk about when things are going well, when actually our job is mostly when things aren't. It's like, look, you can do the stuff that you're already doing well at by yourself, but what happens? Why are you stopping? Like, why are you quitting? Why do you think you're not reaching your goal? Like, every time you say, like, typical thing is like, oh, you know, I started training, I was doing so well, I was doing this. You might have even done some 12-week transformation where they felt the best they've ever felt, blah, blah. But then they can't maintain it and they can't keep it up. So then they don't do anything. It's like, right, I want to talk about that. Like, I'm really happy that you had a great time doing that thing. But if it was that great, like, you'd still be doing it, you know? So let's talk about those challenging moments. Like, what are you coming across each time? And that can only really happen. There's no structure to that. That can only happen when it's happening. So, you know, we'll do like a weekly check-in. That's great. That's nice and structured and you got that weekly accountability. But I don't want you to wait until the end of the week to tell me that you've been struggling to get your ass into the gym, or you've been telling yourself that you're not making progress, when actually, if we sit down and have a look, you absolutely are. But they might be like getting back into that mindset of, oh, my body's not changing, or they might sneakily weigh themselves. not against weighing yourself, but if you don't feel good about it, then let's not do it for the time being. And their weight hasn't changed. But as we know with women, you could be in the best shape of your life and not weigh any different. So having those conversations and being honest about them, I think honesty is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Stop telling yourself you're going to go to the gym in the morning when you're not going to.
Some people just aren't morning people. I think this 5 a.m. club mindset is actually quite harmful for some people. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people who no doubt ping awake at 5 a.m. in the morning and they're great. But some people just have a different body clock. I know I tried getting up early for the gym. It wasn't even that early. It was like 6:30 or something. And it worked for a while, but in the end, I just got annoyed, feeling exhausted, and training, feeling really tired. And I'm only really getting my head into gear at like 9 in the morning, and if anything, it feels like I'm getting more and more awake as the day goes on, and by evening I'm thriving and I'm ready for the day, and everyone's going to bed. So I think some people just almost have to be kind to themselves and think, am I a morning person or am I not? Because if you're not, probably isn't going to be sustainable to try and force it, right? That's something that most people just don't really realise, that their body clock, it might be different to someone else's.
It's such a balance. This is where it gets complex, is everyone is different, and some people need to go in the morning, would be better off going in the morning, but they're like, oh, but I'm not a morning person, and so it's really tricky. And that's why I love the one-to-one stuff, because I like helping someone find what works for them. Like, yes, you could listen to someone who says like going in the morning is the best thing ever, but if anyone is talking in absolutes, you have to be wary of that.
Absolutely. And
that's why actual education isn't that fun. Like, anyone with a huge following has a very, very strong message and is very strongly opinionated on certain things. Like your most popular accounts that you follow, I guarantee will have a niche, like something that they're really passionate about. And usually there's like, they have this one opinion on something. Whereas I've got a fairly decent following on social media and when it comes to that stuff, but I know that I'm never going to have this huge account because I don't have this like one thing that I'm like, you should do this and you'll be amazing, or like, you should follow my strength program and you'll get to this in 12 weeks time. There's no, I know how individual everyone is, so
so true.
It's quite hard to make that sound really fun, because there's so many what ifs and so many caveats to like, oh well, yeah, like you should try this diet, but what about if I'm this and this, and what about this, and what if my mindset isn't great towards tracking food? It's pretty complicated. It's confusing for us at times. So I really feel for those who are just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think being a sitting on the fence kind of person is the right way to be, but it doesn't always seem confident to people that you're working with, and certainly not to Instagram or algorithms. They don't like that stuff so much. But what it does mean is that individually you're much more likely to be successful and have long-term clients, because they'll learn with you, they'll learn themselves, they'll learn the individual nature of how their body responds and what works for them, what doesn't, because you're a coach that's allowing for that and having conversations that enable that, and that helping them learn what their body does actually respond well to. And I guess that's that's a tricky one, but I think it's the right one in a lot of ways. And actually, even for podcasts, like to say it depends isn't always what people want to hear. But at least with a podcast, you have the time to explore it, go into a bit more detail and explain that nuance and explain why it matters and why it's important. We've been speaking a lot here about what you've done and what you currently are doing. But Sam, what are you hoping to do in the future? What does your future look like? It depends, probably.
Still figuring that one out. No, I'm one of those, I can get carried away with all kinds of ideas, and I think when I became a personal trainer, the stuff that I'm doing now I wanted to do immediately. But then it was important for me to just be a personal trainer. I'd say, it's a great thing that I I guess it is. I've never ever said this about myself. It's the first time, so I'm doing it on this podcast. But I guess it is almost like I can't even say it. Entrepreneurial.
There we go.
Is that how you say it?
It is, yeah.
Terrible.
I can tell you haven't said it before.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Look at that. But I think for me now, like what I'm focusing on is I love coaching, but I'm also building a community. So one of the nicest things about what I have is we have like a group of women now who are in a group together and they just chat to each other all the time. It's lovely. I don't even need to say anything anymore.
Coaching themselves.
Yeah. And that's really important. The reason why I did that was because I could say to Pen, mate, don't worry, you're not alone in this. Like, this is what the journey is about. You know, the struggles that you're going through, other people go through all the time. Don't feel silly, this, that, and the other. But I'm the coach, right? I'm like the boss.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah. But hearing it from the other women and being able to share and people understanding. And some women who I coach, a lot of my clients who I coach don't really have friends that they could say, hey, like I deadlifted this much today, and they'll understand it.
So,
you know?
yeah, so what?
Like, well, they just don't know, do they? Don't know what that means. So for that, like we have an amazing group of women that are all, just getting on really well, sharing like dog photos, food, and all that stuff.
All the important stuff.
All the important stuff. But I'm trying to grow that as much as possible. I just want to get as many women lifting weights and feeling confident with it. Part of that is growing a community, growing a brand, so the awareness, you know, you reach more people, you reach more women. So I'm doing kind of meetups. I try and do as many workshops as I can as well, because I appreciate that not everyone, you know, I'm only one person, so the one-to-one stuff I can only do so much. So I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. But within reason as well, like I genuinely care about the service that my clients get and the support that my clients get. So, you know, I'm at a place now where I'm probably going to look at other coaches and like expanding the team and finding people that I know can give that same kind of care and ethos that I do and that I know that my clients appreciate. So yeah, trying to do all that. I've just started selling jumpers, so the Strongest Fat Club. Actually, I've not got it on today because I spilled gravy all over it, but
it's very northern.
Gravy and coffee, yeah, like a nice mix there. But that was just, you know, started off as just I wanted something for my clients, and you know, you can't go wrong with an oversized sweatshirt, let's face it.
These days.
Yeah.
As my wife keeps telling me.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about fashion, but she keeps showing me all these oversized garments and telling me I should wear them. So
yeah. Well, they are comfy. So working on that, and just I think as well, just it's so nice to, like, I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing merch, I'm doing events, this, that, and the other. But sometimes it's so important to just enjoy what you're doing as well, and just work on just doing.
And you are?
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, I love it. I'm quite happy with, proud of the fact that I've gotten to a place now where I'm not working stupid hours. You know, I have a really nice balance. Like, that means a lot to me, and I want that for my clients as well, which is why I talk about balance a lot. And when people are trying to do too much, it's like just rein it in a little bit, because, you know, you might want to train 4 or 5 times a week, but how about just do 3 and then use that time to relax?
Do nothing.
Like, you know, that's very important. Play on the Xbox. Yeah, I'm a gamer now. Yeah.
I'm a retired gamer. Maybe I need to go back to it.
I don't know. It's not relaxing in the slightest.
Yeah,
like the game I play, there is. I keep seeing this power wash simulator, which is not my jam, but my boyfriend's really into cleaning, so for him that's like super chilled. But what I play is not relaxing in the slightest, but I really love it. It forces me to not think. I can't think about anything else, and it's not fitness.
Yeah. So
it's just nice to have something that's, you know, outside of what I do. It's like completely different. I do feel like a massive nerd, but I love it.
own it. I think you have.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with a headset now.
I can see.
I have a headset. And I'm such a nerd.
Final questions for you.
Yeah.
I haven't asked this one before, actually. I decided I was going to do this the other day. What does Better Never Ends mean to you? It's a bit cheesy, but I'm keen. I'm keen to do it. So what does Better Never Ends mean to you in your world?
Yeah, pretty much what I try and teach my clients is that, like, this is a long term. This shouldn't be ending. Like, you shouldn't be thinking of a deadline or rushing so much to the point where, like, why are you actually in a rush? If you think about it, this should be just something that makes you live better, feel better, enjoy life much more. Yeah, I've never actually thought about that because I know that that's your brand. But yeah, for me, it's just making it something that is part of your life on whatever form that is, and however you do that is individual to you, but it shouldn't be something you're trying to stop, for sure.
Amazing. And what about when you're trying to learn? What's your go-to learning? Are there books or their podcasts? What's the thing that's really grabbed you in your learning in the last year or so?
I'm really not much of a study. I really struggle. I didn't do college or uni for the same reason. I'm very much a doer. Like, I'd learn on the go. So the way I learn, and I do go to seminars and I have a coach myself and I have mentors, but similar to you, like, I speak to people like you. We're very lucky to be working in a place where there's actually some really good people in the industry around us. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'll go and ask someone. And that's how I learn. And then I just apply it to clients.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And
how would someone find you and get in touch with you if they're looking to learn more about you or maybe work with you?
So Instagram, probably the best way. Sam Says _PT, so like Simon Says.
Yeah.
That actually came from when I set up a freelance content and writing business at one point. Sam Says.
Another string to your bow. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the business card still. It's quite funny to think that I did that. Instagram, and then I also have the Strongest Fuck Club, so Strong AF. But yeah, you can find me on there.
Very good.
I'll pop up for sure.
Thanks so much, Sam. I hope you've enjoyed today. It's been really good, really enjoyable conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Better, provider of health, wellness and performance services based in central London. You can book in for face-to-face services at either of our 2 clinics, one in Soho and one in the city. You can also follow us on Instagram at Better Never Ends, or head over to our website for more information about the clinics or the podcast at www.betterneverends.com. And of course, if you want to send us an email with any feedback, questions or suggestions for future episodes, then email us on podcast@betterneverends.com. And finally, thanks to Brian Long for editing the show. Without him, it's absolutely no doubt in my mind that these would never have seen the light of day. And it will allow this podcast to continue on for as long as I'll keep recording them. So thanks very much, Brian.